you have a really unique reason for starting Kiraa, and it's something that would help, I think, would help a lot of people if they could understand. But you're in a really unusually unique position. So I want to take you back. I want you to just explain to me how high did you get in the corporate world? Just give us your absolute
Yep. Yeah.
top.
But where was the peak? Well, I guess the peak for me in my Nestle career, because I started finished uni, I went straight into a graduate role with Nestle. And I think I told you the backstory that I actually got, I actually hacked the Nestle mainframe and I ended up breaking it. And instead of sacking me, they actually promoted me. So I spent 10 years traveling around Asia, Middle East, and Africa, designing and implementing a new manufacturing costing system, which would be absolutely unheard of these days, right? I mean, if someone does that now, they'd be out on their ass straight away. But Nestle obviously saw something that was pretty clever, put me onto this project, and I loved it. So I got sort of international quality experience as a early 20-year-old, which is great. But after that, I kind of got bored with the travel all the time, so I took a traditional accounting role. And then, that did okay at that for a while. And then I got picked up onto another growth project again, so went back into the sort of acquisition space. And then then Nestle was implementing SAP, which, as you know, is a huge horrible thing that any corporate goes through. It's a 2 or 3 years minimum of absolute pain. So I actually got, my role was to stabilize the financial reporting aspect of that for the Oceania region. So I got Nestle's SAP working for finance in a way that was pretty horribly hard work, but it was amazing. And then I got sort of tapped on the shoulder to go and do it all over again in Middle East. So and I was looking after the decision support role for Nestle Middle East. So I kind of, I got fairly high up in Nestle in the sense that I was head of decision support and reporting for both the Oceania region and the Middle East region. So they were very important regions for the Nestle group, because Australia was very profitable. And the Middle East was very growing. So I got quite a reputation, or I was quite well known inside the Nestle world because of my ability to get these systems working, and sort of get people to find use out of these massive systems that we'd paid all this money for.
Yeah, so people that might have discovered you in the tech world or your tech role, you have this sort of unique background of absolutely understanding how bringing in a new system into your company can be painful and difficult.
Yeah, well, I used to describe myself as like a bit of a whisperer, because I could understand what the finance people were saying, but I also understand what the technical people were saying. So often I would just run, I would bounce between those two worlds, because I could understand what they were both saying, and they're both right, but they both didn't have a complete picture. So having that unique perspective of both sides of things is what really made the difference in terms of getting systems to work properly.
Yeah. So you moved on from Nestle and sort of experienced something that not a lot of people would necessarily go through, but it's a huge risk for businesses. You were working in a team and you lost a critical member.
Yeah.
Which was
Yep. So
very sad.
yeah, it's horrible. So yeah, so I decided to leave Nestle at Middle East. They were trying very hard to get me to do a third project in East Africa. And I decided I couldn't do another one. And by that time, my father also had a heart attack. And I thought, the last thing I want to be is, 20 hours away on a plane when my family's sick. So I decided to come back to Australia. I picked up a job working for Amcor. Amcor is the world's largest packaging company. Also uses SAP, and it was in a bit of a mess because I think we were losing something like $45 million a year. It was an enormous amount of, we're losing money big time. And so I was part of the analytical team that turned that around into a $35 million profit. Now, when I picked up that team, I was looking after sales analytics, and then my role expanded and I was looking after manufacturing analytics. And there was a guy in that team who was, his name was Fred. He was what you would say was he knew everything about the manufacturing process. He was the resident expert in everything. And when I took over that team, I realized that Fred was actually quite sick, and I was trying to find a way for him to get the medical care that he needed, but also, make sure that the company had all of its resources and skills that it needed to continue. Unfortunately, we put some plans in place, and I was working with Fred to get him to part-time for part of the year, etc. And unfortunately, in 2016, I woke up to the news that he'd actually died suddenly, before I had a chance really to get all of the the information out of his head and to get him the medical treatment that he needed. So it was a catastrophic failure. It was horrible because this guy knew everything, which was great for him from a professional sense, but it was also a huge shackle because he couldn't take leave, and he needed time to recuperate and have surgery, and he always put his own health second. And I just regret that I just didn't take that team over earlier and put in place the things that I needed. And he might still be alive today, but yeah, that was a real personal tragedy that I saw, someone that had so much to give and lost the ability to give anything because we didn't look after him.
Mm. It's so sad, but I mean, if anybody looks around their workplace at the moment, there will always be somebody like that
Yeah,
it's irreplaceable,
yeah.
and we just don't know what the future has in store. So that sort of spurred you on to creating Kiraa. There's also something else about it as well. So you obviously have to like the finance side of things to have worked at the level that you did. But I was wondering if you could sort of say, like, what was the best thing about working in that area for companies, and what was the worst thing about working there?
The worst thing, I mean, it's a really interesting thing because when I left uni, there was really no such thing as a programmer or a developer role. I mean, this is the early, I think 92, I think I started working, and it just wasn't a thing. I mean, the idea that you could have a job as an accountant and that was about it. There was no such thing as a business analyst or a decisions support scientist, or like these roles just didn't exist back then. So the only thing I kind of felt I fit into was the accountant role, but I was actually a really shit accountant. I'm really not very good at it. I'm not a great accountant at all, but
Come
I
on,
am a great.
I don't think you get to the level that you get without
No,
having
but
some ability there.
yeah, look, I could do that, but I never loved it. So I reckon I would have done 300 month ends. And for me, the only reason I got to do really cool stuff, and I worked on some great projects, and I was always working on great projects, and that was the thing that Nestle did really well for me. They threw really challenging projects at me. I did everything from studies on aging, to designing new plants and really solving some really great business problems. And I love that part. I love going into a really decent, meaty challenge and trying to do the analysis and come up with some great recommendations. The downside was that in order for me to do that role, I needed to lead the reporting teams, which means I needed to do month end, I needed to do budgets, I needed to do forecasts. So half my role was shit, and I hated it. I really, honestly, I could tell you the many times I've driven into work, and I just wanted to turn around because I just hated it so much, because I knew that for the next 10 days, my life was going to be spreadsheets and month end and stuff. But once I could get through that, I had the rest of the month to go and do really cool analytical work and get involved in projects and those sorts of things. So for me, it was always this Jekyll and Hyde, where I was like going back into my cave and working my ass off so I could create the capacity to spend more time doing the stuff that I knew that the business really needed and valued. But you just don't have those sorts of roles where you get to do all the analysis all the time, because stuff needs to get done. So I was always having to try and accelerate the process as much as possible so I get more of the good stuff and less of the bad stuff. And that's really the
Yeah.
key motivation behind Kiraa. How do I get more of the good stuff and none of the bad stuff?
Well, I think you're the only person that I know that has gone from being a CFO to actually inventing the software that would make it easier. So how does it make it easier? What
Yeah,
is What
Yeah.
does Kiraa do for you that you like, and how might it have changed the way you worked on the big projects that you did for Nestle?
Yeah, so it's a little bit technical, so but I won't try and talk about too much. But basically, the core technology I've developed is a thing called an analytical data frame. And so, if you think about most analysts and analytics we do today, is with flat files. So it looks like a table of invoice, date, customer, products, sales, etc. And that's just data. That's just numbers. What I've developed is a new type of file, which not just has the numbers, it has the words and the analysis and the commentary. So it's a special type of file format. I use an example here actually. We've got these really cool cubes that we found, which are called CMY cubes.
Yeah.
But the idea here is that every time you look at that through a different angle, you get a different perspective. So you think about a traditional data file might just be a solid block of numbers, but this is a special type of file where you've got all of the contextual information buried inside the data file. And because I can compress all that into a very, very small piece of code, what that means is when I want to run analysis, I can run millions and millions of words of analysis really, really quickly because it's not having to go and look up tables and do lookups. It's got everything that it needs in this one place. And having everything available in one place means that I can generate 1,000,000 words of analysis for less than 1 cent. Now, think
Wow.
about what a million words of analysis. If you think about, I did my doctorate, took me 5 years to write the thesis. It was 70,000 words. That
Oh my goodness.
wouldn't even, and that's the kind of output that really high quality analytical output of 70,000 words is going to take you, best part of a couple of years full time to do it. But now what I've developed is a technique where I can generate millions of words of analysis in fractions of a second.
So does that mean that's an end to the month-end reporting? Is that something that Kiraa can do for you?
Yeah, that's my goal. My goal, my vision is to put an end to month end.
So you've taken basically the pain points, like the worst parts of your job, and found a solution for it so that
Absolutely.
nobody else has to suffer in the
Nobody else
future.
has to suffer. Nobody else has to, and suffer is the right word, to be honest, right? Because I've been, as we know, we've been friends for many years. I've been a particularly bad friend to lots of people. I wasn't there for many of my friends' weddings. I wasn't there for my family because I had this thing called month end that I had to keep doing, right? I mean, you can't just leave the office at 5 on day 3 of a month end, right? Because the ledger's about to close and all sorts of stuff you got to do. Even if you do attend, you're not really there because you're thinking, tomorrow I now get in, I've got to do da 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 da. So you're not fully present when you're having to run these big processes, especially for big corporates. They really don't care about anything other than the deadline. I mean, it was not uncommon for Nestle in Switzerland to call someone at 3 in the morning because a number was wrong. So it's a different level of intensity that people just don't realize unless they work at the big end of town.
Mm. And so does it, I guess having an AI model that can achieve that, I'm just sort of thinking there's two things. Like, one, you take out the human factor of making mistakes and missing a number, but also the information doesn't have to wait till month end either. If I wanted
No,
it in the middle of the month, I could get it.
well, that's exactly the point. So, I mean, you think about the concept of month end. It's an artificial idea that we have created to sort of to allow us to do work. We've carved out this space and said every month everybody stops, we count the numbers and we move on. And that's only because it's so damn hard that you can only do it once a month. But what if it was so easy you could do it not every week, not every day, but what if you could do it every hour? And that way everything moves into this continuous knowledge generation cycle. That to me is where we need to get to. The whole idea of month end is a human construct because we don't have enough capacity to do it more often.
Yeah, well, who would want to do it more often if you had to do
Never,
it manually?
I would never want
Nobody.
to do it ever again, to be honest.
Gee, and I have a hard enough time doing my tax return at once a year. So
Oh, I'm not good at that
it's,
either, trust me.
oh, okay. So how so what sort of what sort of business capacity do you have then with Kiraa? Like, who would this really suit? I mean, is this the sort of thing just for the big end of town, or, smaller manufacturing companies, could they benefit from it?
Yeah. I actually think the real opportunity is not in the big end of town, because a lot of the times they've already got fairly sophisticated systems and governance processes. Like, actually working in big end of town is great for continuing things, but they're not necessarily innovative. They can't move very quickly. They've all of their infrastructure is designed around the way that things work today, which actually is part of what we're seeing in the AI research, that sort of big end of town is not adopting AI as quickly as you might expect. What the research is actually showing is the mid-market, medium-sized companies, they're a bit smaller, a bit more nimble, a bit more hungry. They're the ones that are actually making the real improvements, because they're not necessarily buried down with layers of bureaucracy and administration. So this sort of stuff builds up over time, and the bigger the company, the slower they move. So we used to talk about, in Nestle, we used to talk about how do we make the elephant dance, right? And it's
It
very
sounds
hard to
very
do.
Swiss.
It's very Swiss, yeah. But actually, to be honest, I think where I have chosen to focus is on the mid-market, because I think once you get, particularly a family-owned businesses, they're great, because family-owned businesses don't, they just want to get to the answer. They don't want necessarily do all of the corporate theatrics that some of the big companies like to do. They just want to get on and solve problems. And I think that whole mid-market has really been under-addressed from a technology point of view for way too long, because everyone likes the big labels, but the real
Yeah.
impact is at the mid-market, and potentially even smaller businesses. So I'm working with a couple that have really got nothing today, and so when you take someone from nothing to something amazing, it's a bit like what they talk about in Africa, about they go from landlines to 5G. They didn't go from the landline to the 3G to the 4. They just leapfrog.
Mm,
And
mm,
leapfrogging a business is way more personally satisfying than sort of making a 2% improvement on a big multinational.
mm. So have you had some customers that have made big wins, and, what does that look like on Kiraa?
Yeah, our first foundation customer was OG, which is a packaging company that is very similar to the industry that I was last at, and we got them to actually achieve 0-day sales close. So that means that on 0 day, on the first day of rocking it month end, every single product, every single customer, every single plant, every single brand, every product had its full analytical context available. Now that would have easily taken 2 weeks for someone to do manually, but we've now done that consistently every month. We've delivered them a 0-day close. Now I'm working with them now to try and to take the next step, which is to go. I was going to go to week. I'm actually going to go straight to day. So I'm going to get to every day. We're going to run their sales analytics every single day. So we're right at the cusp of doing that right now. But yeah, I'm really proud that we actually achieved 0-day close with them, with our first foundation customer. It was a huge achievement.
Yeah. So what does that mean for them in a business profit
Yeah,
situation?
yeah. So I mean, particularly in manufacturing, and particularly at the moment, if with tariffs and exchange rates, you think about, if you don't know that you're a good example, if you've got a product, and this has actually happened many times in my career as I think about it, you're selling a product, and then one of the key ingredient goes up in price, and all of a sudden, instead of thinking you're making 20% margin, you might actually be losing 20% margin. So effectively, every pallet that goes out the door, you might as well just staple $50 to it, right?
Oh,
So you're actually going backwards. So the sooner you realize that you're losing money on that product, the sooner you can put a price increase, or you can stop selling it. It's really as dramatic as that. If you don't know that you're losing money on something, you're going to just continue to burn cash for no reason. So having the ability to say, look, something's changed here. I need to know the answer right now. What am I going to do about it on day one, versus waiting potentially for 2 weeks, maybe even 3, or maybe even not, maybe even longer, right? So having that insights available just gives you clarity to save money really quickly.
and does it take into account all the variations that are around at the moment on the market, like, the political situation in America, China, the interest rates, what the Reserve Bank's doing, or all,
Yeah.
can it calculate all that for us?
It can, but I tend to think that there are some things that humans are better to do, and there are a lot of things that AI is better to do. So I think it's always good not to try and, I think where the AI world is going wrong is they're trying to get AI to handle all of the fancy edge cases, right? They're worried about how do I make sure I can identify the top 3 customers that haven't bought this, like something really obscure.
Yeah, yeah.
The actual value is not in that. The actual value is the routine bread and butter stuff, the stuff that people spend their time just filling in the same spreadsheets with the same sets of commentary. So I tend to think that the value is not in the edge cases. The value is in the meat and potatoes analysis, if you like. Getting those foundations right and solid is going to give you far more value than designing something that can do some really, really sophisticated niche piece of analysis, because that's what humans are good at.
Mm. So how do you actually work with a customer? So if I say, signed up a business, how would you?
Penny's Biscuit Company, Penny's Biscuits. You've
Well,
got a new biscuit
okay, so
coming.
okay, so my neighbour's got a winery, for
Yep,
example.
yep.
For example, we were helping him do a stock take the other day, and like he's got stuff everywhere, and
Mm,
discovered some extra Shiraz that they didn't know they had, sort of thing. So I don't
yeah,
know how you lose that much wine, but yeah, that sort of thing.
yeah. Yeah, so the way you start really is, I mean, I've got a playbook of how I think you can get to an automated month end, and it usually starts with sales.
Mm,
There's a good reason in every business that you always start with sales, because sales is the only conduit you've got to the outside world. That's really tells you if your products are performing, if the customers are buying them. So I always like to start with sales analytics by saying, look, tell me, how do you analyze your sales today? What would it mean if you get it faster? What do you want? I think the other element you need to think about is what behaviors do you want your teams to be exhibiting? And you do that through providing them the right kind of information. So it's not we actually don't start as a technical thing. We actually start as a really discovery thing, which is tell me about your business. What's great about it? What could be better? And tell me what stops you from achieving that today. And you start brainstorming that, because very often where people think they want to start is actually not the most valuable thing.
mm. That's fascinating because, like, most people would go, "Oh, I'm sort of buying an AI system in with Kiraa," but it's actually a lot more than that. It's not techie, it's personal.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is very technical underneath, but
Yeah,
the idea is the
obviously. Sorry.
customers, but no, that's fine. But the customers don't need to know that. They're not buying the technology; they're buying the outcome. So we need to be very clear with them. What is the outcome that you would be satisfied with? And then our job is to then find a technical solution that says, if that was true, what would you need to see to be comfortable that Kiraa could deliver that? So we really try not to talk tech too much. We really want to talk problems, because a lot of the times, if you think about, this is another great misunderstanding about technology. Technology is only one element. All work is done through people, processes, and systems, right? So people is number one. What are the people doing? What do they know? What are their skill levels? The processes, how does it work together? Who does what? And the system is the technology. So by just looking at the system, we're only addressing one of a three-legged stool. So we really have to start with the people, then talk about the process, and then we can talk about the system. But a lot of the big tech companies today just start with system and hope that you can somehow work out the people and the process along the way. It's the
Mhm.
completely wrong approach.
Okay. So it sounds really fascinating, and it sounds like, it'd be really great to work with you. But we're hearing all these stories about AI sort of consuming so many so many resources,
Mm.
and it possibly making mistakes and things like that. What makes your AI different to
Yeah.
the
Well, without getting too technical, but you're absolutely right. And I think people have a misunderstanding about AI, that they think it's inherently a guess. Like, so AI itself, the word is actually a terrible term to use. It's artificial. It's not artificial intelligence at all. In fact, it's probably more like natural intelligence. I see your cat there on your
I'm sorry, it just
no, no,
jumped on my
no,
lap. I'm
no,
looking
but
like a Bond
it's
villain.
it's a great idea. It's a great example though, because you think about a cat. If you feed a cat, you have a cat, right? And it's
Yeah,
a great metaphor for AI, because whatever you tell it to do, it will just do more of. So
but cats
it's
don't
not.
do anything they
Well,
tell
if you
them
feed them,
to.
they will.
Okay, yeah, true.
So,
Yeah,
so
so
generative AI particularly is what they call probabilistic. It gives you the best guess answer, and that's really what a hallucination is, where it doesn't know everything. It's going to make it up. And obviously, the more training data that you throw at it, the better it gets. I mean, we've seen that through ChatGPT. When it first came out, it couldn't tell you the number of R's in strawberry, right? But today they've obviously done a lot of work to try and fix those models. Um, but inherently, generative AI is always just a probabilistic model. It's going to try and guess the closest answer to the to what it thinks you want to do, and it's always going to try and satisfy you. The problem is that you actually don't want that in business. You don't want a good guess. I don't know if you've seen the cartoons about the surgeon who's got an AI, and it says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I've taken out the wrong kidney." You're totally right. I'll try again a little bit harder next time, right? You can't rely on technology that's going to make stuff up and feel confident in it. I mean, if you had an employee who constantly got things wrong and apologized and did the same thing again next month, you'd fire them. So I think generative AI has a real problem in enterprise use cases. What you actually need is not probabilistic, you need deterministic. You need to know that for this set of inputs, you're always going to get this set of outputs. And so the technology I've developed uses a technique called Cache Augmented Generation, as opposed to what everyone else is doing in the world today, which is retrieval augmented generation. The difference is that retrieval augmented generation recognizes that there are going to be hallucinations and tries to overcome it by doing extra checks. It'll have a checking model and a checker
yeah,
and a check. Now, the problem with that is it actually makes the quality worse, because what happens a lot of times with models, it'll come up with an answer that's wrong. It'll send it to the checker, and the checker goes, "Oh yeah, that makes sense," and it makes the answer even more convincingly wrong. It
yeah.
doesn't have a frame of reference to go, "These are the facts that I know." So the technology I've developed is working on a thing called CAG, or Cache Augmented Generation, which means that it's got the full set of facts available that we can audit and validate and check, so that when the AI works, it's only working on what it's being given. If I'm going to ask it a question about the set of facts that it doesn't know, this computer says no, and that's what you want. You want AI to say, "I don't know."
Mm,
You know,
mm,
that's deterministic AI, not probabilistic AI, which is what everyone is using today, and they're finding that hallucinations are just not going away.
mm. Gosh, that's a little bit terrifying, really, isn't it? If you ended up with the wrong AI. So, what would life be like then if you were the CFO of a mid-sized company that had Kiraa, and we took away month end? What would you be doing?
What I'd be doing, I mean, I've worked with a lot of great finance people throughout the years, right? And a lot of people who get into finance are analytical. They're analytical people. They'll study stuff. They'll analyze it. What I would like to hope that what life looks like with Kiraa is you've got all these great finance people who are out solving problems in the business. So a lot of the times you find you've got people in operational roles, but they're not financially literate. They know how the machines work, but they can't explain it in financial terms what it means. If you put a great finance person with a great operational person, you solve problems really quickly, because all of a sudden the person who knows how the machine works, or knows how the customers work, or knows how a particular process works, has got someone who can then use the right language to say, this is the impact on margin, this is what we need to do commercially to make this happen. So I think what I'd like to see, the future that I'd like to see, is finance people not in the offices at 10 o'clock at night doing month end, but out of the factory working with truck drivers and forklift operators and all the people that actually make work happen, helping them reduce costs, increase simplicity. That's where the real value comes, is by getting a great analytical mind with someone who's trying to do a real job.
Mm. And in my experience of of management, which isn't huge, but it was the time that you spent away from like the factory floor was when things could really go wrong, and
Yeah.
you didn't know about it because you just never had the time, because you were always sort of too busy preparing a
Yeah.
report for the higher
Yeah.
ups. And
Yeah. That's so true. And
oh,
also, I also think that the other thing that happens with finance people is that if you lock them away in a room for a week every month, they don't get the chance to build relationships with people in the factory. And I remember a time once where one of the guys in the factory came to me at month end. He said, "Errol, we've made a big mistake. We've screwed up some ice cream. What do I do?" And like, well, okay, well,
eat
there's
your
obviously a few.
problems.
Yeah, I mean, the first reaction was to be just to hide it and don't tell anyone. So I said, look, obviously that's not the right thing to do. What we need to do is obviously signal the variance. There's going to be it's going to cost us $40,000-$50,000 to fix this, right? But I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll help you analyze the situation, explain the story, so that when I go into the CEO's office and tell him what's happened, I've already prepared. I've already explained what happened, what we learned out about it, what we're going to do about it, why it won't happen again. Because then when you deliver that news, that's so much easier to palate than,
Mm,
oh, we've just wasted $50,000 of ice cream because someone put the wrong ingredient in. What do we do, right? So that's
mm.
where building up really good relationships between accounting people and operational people helps businesses work better, because there's an element of trust. And I'm not here to try and screw you over. I'm trying to help the business go forward with information.
Yeah, it sounds like it could be, something really positive for, businesses and the people that run the finances for them too. So how hard is it to get a hold of?
We're talking to a lot of customers at the moment. Actually, we've got lots of interest from Australia and overseas as well. I'm actually looking at doing a project with a big retail group in the Middle East. But we really only finished the engine to the point where I was really, really happy with it sort of at the end of December. So we've really just started that sales pipeline activity now. It takes a while to get obviously all the stakeholders aligned, and people need to know that I'm not just sort of some guy that's just come up with an idea on the weekend on a Friday night or something. I mean, people need a little bit of time to understand that I've been thinking about Kiraa, to be completely honest with you, since I crashed that Nestle mainframe. Because at the end of the day, what I was trying to do was automate my job, because I didn't like doing
Yes.
variance reporting, right? That was the reason why I broke
Find
the mainframe.
find a problem and fix it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that, that's the aim for anybody, is like they want the best bits of their job. They want the reason why they
yeah,
started the job in the first place, and eliminate all that sort of routine, important but boring, but
yeah,
terrifying if you make a mistake stuff taken
yeah.
away.
Yeah, and
Give it
I
to
used to
someone
feel bad recruiting accountants, because I'd said that I'd feel bad because I'd say to them, look, we do a lot of great analysis, got a great projects, work on integrations, but also, to be fair with you, we work really hard during month end, and you're going to be doing overtime, and you probably have to work on the weekend. I mean, it's a different world now as well. Don't forget, in the mid-90s, it was totally acceptable that you can work a graduate till 10 o'clock at night and make them work on weekends. Now we've got right to disconnect laws, which, to be honest, is a great thing, because it means that corporates can't abuse that that energy. But I also knew that's how the game was played. So what I'm hoping is we end up in a world where people can do reasonable hours, get a good income for reasonable hours, and not have these really unrealistic expectations placed on their life, which limits their ability to be a good human with others. They can still get all of the juicy analytic stuff that gets them excited without all of the drudgery of month end.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Oh, thanks so much, Errol.